My name is Samantha, and I am 32 years old. I have been married to my husband, Jake, for 3 years, but we do not have children yet. We live together in an apartment, and the only time we visit our families is during the Festival of Souls and New Year's. Since Jake's parents live far away, these are the only occasions we can make the trip. Those visits are always lively, with many relatives gathering together. Jake's parents are warm and welcoming, treating me as if I were their own daughter. Whenever the family gets together for a banquet, they often ask me for help. There is never any condescension in their requests. I genuinely enjoy working alongside them. However, my husband has a younger sister, Miranda, who has a difficult personality. She never lifts a finger to help her parents and, from what I can tell, has no interest in doing so. One day, while preparing food for the family gathering, my mother-in-law sighed and confided in me. Honestly, Samantha, it is easier to talk to you than to my own daughter. I always end up asking for your help instead of hers. It was clear that even she struggled with Miranda's attitude. Though my father-in-law liked to boast about Miranda's academic success, she had attended a prestigious university and was now preparing to study abroad. Her mother was more concerned about her personality. Miranda had always been highly intelligent, excelling at everything she attempted. But along with her intelligence came an arrogance that made her look down on others, especially her own brother. During one of the family gatherings, a relative casually commented, "It is great that both of you went to college. Smart siblings." Miranda immediately shot the person a cold glare and replied, "Do not lump my university together with the third-rate school my brother went to. Graduating from a place like that is basically the same as having a high school diploma." The entire room went silent, the air thick with tension. But Jake, ever good-natured, smiled and said, "Well, I might have gone to a third-rate university, but I still got myself a beautiful wife. And I am happy, so that is all that matters." His light-hearted remark made the relatives chuckle, easing the awkwardness in the room. However, Miranda was far from amused. Her sharp gaze landed on me instead. "So, Samantha, which university did you graduate from?" she asked, knowing full well that I had only finished high school. I was not ashamed of my education, so I answered honestly. "I only graduated from high school, actually." Miranda dramatically gasped, her voice dripping with mockery. "Wow, I just assumed my brother's wife had at least gone to college, considering how highly he speaks of her. I guess there really are people who only graduate high school these days." With that, she turned on her heel and left, leaving behind a room full of uncomfortable relatives. Many of them had also not attended college, and Miranda's words had made them feel insulted. Jake and my mother-in-law had no choice but to bow their heads in apology. After finishing her studies, Miranda went to graduate school, and after completing that, she announced her plans to study abroad. Before she left, we gathered at my in-laws' house to see her off. As expected, she could not resist throwing in one last insult. "Samantha, I doubt someone like you has ever even traveled abroad, let alone studied there. It is nothing like taking a vacation," she said smugly. Jake was about to snap back at her, but I gently stopped him, smiling at Miranda instead. "It is true that I have never studied abroad, but it is not always easy living in a foreign country. The culture, the food, even the safety, everything is different, so make sure you take care of yourself." I had meant it as genuine advice, but Miranda's face twisted in anger. "Do not act like you know anything about studying abroad," she snapped before storming out. After she left, my father-in-law, who had funded her entire education, let out a weary laugh. "I hope she lands a high-paying job after all this. I have spent more money on her than I can count." Jake chuckled at his father's words. "She did say she wants to intern at some big-name foreign company, right? That is what she was bragging to me about last time." My mother-in-law, ever the concerned parent, sighed. "I just hope she can secure a stable job after she returns." I had no interest in Miranda's career plans, so I focused on cleaning up after the relatives left. With Miranda finally gone, visiting my in-laws became a joy. The atmosphere was peaceful, and I loved spending time with them. My mother-in-law and I often cooked together, while my father-in-law shared stories about Jake's childhood. Without Miranda's constant belittling, our visits were truly enjoyable. About 6 months passed, and I had almost forgotten about Miranda entirely. Then one day, Jake's phone rang. "My sister is coming back next week," he told me. "She is going to start an internship at a company." His father had called to let him know that Miranda would be working at one company for a month before moving on to another. Just hearing about Miranda made my stomach turn. "I am sorry, but I do not want to see her," I admitted. Jake, to my surprise, turned serious. "I do not want to see her either," he confessed. "My dad is drowning in debt because of her, and all she ever does is brag about her expensive education. She has never cared about anyone but herself." For the first time, I saw a glimpse of frustration in Jake's voice when it came to his sister. I wondered if Miranda had even once considered how her actions affected those around her. Jake never openly admitted he disliked his sister, at least not in front of me. But I could sense it. Regardless, I had no intention of visiting my in-laws while Miranda was back in town. Jake and I had discussed it, thinking we could avoid her entirely, but fate had other plans. The very next day at work, I received an announcement from the Human Resources Department about an upcoming internship program. Apparently, an international student was set to arrive soon. Our company had a program where we introduced foreign workers to businesses across the United States, helping place them in roles like legal consultants, translators, and even executive positions. We also facilitated placements for Americans in companies overseas. As I scanned the list of incoming interns, my breath caught in my throat. Right there, staring back at me, was a name I never expected to see: Miranda. I had no idea why she would be interning at my company, especially since it was not a large corporation. Miranda had studied economics at university and graduate school, or so she had always bragged. Maybe she was planning to work in business consulting? Still, something did not add up. I turned to the HR representative and asked, "Is it common for our company to take on interns?" The HR manager sighed, looking troubled. "Not really. But lately, there has been a push to expand internships, and we were basically required to take someone in." Then, as if realizing something, he added, "To be honest, her academic record was not great. That was actually a factor in her placement." I nearly did a double take. Miranda, the self-proclaimed academic prodigy, struggling with her grades? I wondered if this was just a case of someone sharing the same name, though deep down, I already knew the answer. For now, I decided to keep this information to myself. If it really was Miranda, I would deal with it when the time came. About a month later, the day of the internship arrived. As usual, I was the first one at the office. Since many of our employees were from different countries, they had more of a business-first mentality and rarely showed up early. I, on the other hand, like to keep the workspace clean, so I usually spend my mornings wiping down desks and mopping the floor. That morning, as I was finishing up, a woman walked in and greeted me in an uninterested, almost reluctant tone. "Good morning. I am Miranda, the new intern." She had arrived before the official start time, which was unusual. Maybe she was nervous, or maybe she was already disappointed that this was not the elite company she had imagined. Either way, she clearly was not thrilled to be there. Hearing her voice, I instinctively turned around and replied, "Good morning." Our eyes met, and the moment she recognized me, her usual condescending smirk appeared. "What are you doing here?" she sneered. Then, looking at my cleaning uniform, she scoffed. "Oh, I see. You are the janitor, right? Guess it makes sense. A high school graduate like you would end up doing this kind of work." Typical Miranda, acting superior, as always. I did not even flinch. I simply continued wiping down a desk and replied with a calm smile. "So, you are starting your internship today? There might be a lot of things that seem unfamiliar, but I am sure you will adjust. Just do your best." She let out an amused laugh. What the hell is the janitor talking about? Just finish cleaning up and get lost. A few of my employees had started trickling in, and Miranda instantly switched back to her polite, nervous demeanor. I finished up my cleaning, stepped into the back room, and changed into my work attire. Our company had a tradition of starting the day with a morning meeting. By the time I entered the conference room, all the employees were lined up, including Miranda, who was standing stiffly in the crowd. The second she saw me, she scowled. "Why is the janitor in here?" she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Outsiders do not belong in company meetings." The room went silent, and I saw a few of my employees exchange surprised glances. One of them immediately turned to Miranda and said, "Do you have any idea who you are talking to?" "That is our president." The color drained from Miranda's face. "What? That is impossible." Still in disbelief, she turned back to me, glaring. "You are lying. There is no way a high school graduate janitor is running a company." The HR manager next to her looked absolutely mortified. "Miranda, please stop," he whispered urgently. She was still fuming, but I spoke calmly. "I understand why you are confused. You have only ever known me by my married name, but at work, I use my maiden name. That is why you never made the connection." I continued. "This company is indeed foreign affiliated, but I am the president of the U.S. division. Right after high school, I moved to the United States and began working for the company's founder. I helped expand the business, specifically by introducing talent from overseas to national corporations. Over time, the company grew, and 5 years ago, we decided to open a branch here." Miranda stood there, unable to process what she had just heard. The arrogance that was always so present on her face had completely vanished. Even after I explained everything, Miranda still seemed unwilling to believe it. After the morning meeting, I pulled her and the HR manager aside for a private discussion. She should not be given any special treatment just because she is my sister-in-law. Whether or not she gets hired in the future, she needs to understand what it actually means to work," I said firmly. The HR manager nodded with a polite smile, but Miranda looked humiliated. Her usual smugness had disappeared, and instead, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. I could tell it was eating her up to take orders from someone she had always belittled. After that conversation, I completely stepped back and let the HR team handle her. I did not check in on her or interfere in any way. That evening, out of curiosity, I casually asked the HR manager how Miranda had performed on her first day. The response was blunt. "Honestly? She is completely incompetent. Full of pride, but she cannot do a thing. On top of that, she refuses to listen, which makes it impossible to work with her. I have only observed her for 1 day, but I already know this company will not be hiring her." Then, the HR manager hesitated before adding, "Also, she does not seem to have the language skills we expected, despite studying abroad." That was the biggest shock of all. Miranda had always bragged about her academic achievements, yet her communication skills were so poor that it was a major concern. If she could not function in a professional setting, it would be tough for her to find work anywhere. That night, before I even had the chance to tell Jake about Miranda's internship, he brought it up himself. "Did Miranda start working at your company today?" he asked. "Dad called me, asking if she could get a job there." Before I could even process that, he kept going. "Apparently, she applied to a big company, but she got rejected before even making it past the application stage." I sighed. "Jake, your dad does not really understand how our company works, does he? Speaking English is necessary, of course, but Miranda barely speaks it. And to make things worse, she mistook me for a janitor and insulted me in front of my employees." Jake's eyes widened. He looked completely stunned. "So she really does not have a shot at working there, huh?" he muttered, finally realizing just how bad things were for his sister. Miranda showed up at work for exactly 1 week. She mostly just observed the office and barely contributed. Then, the following week, she stopped coming in without any notice. HR tried calling her several times, but her phone was turned off. She had completely disappeared. I was asked if I could contact her parents, but I refused. If she is skipping work without permission, that is her own responsibility. Let the head office know that the internship is over. I will confirm her safety privately, but that is all. When I called my mother-in-law, she sighed. She has locked herself in her room, she said. Apparently, Miranda had never experienced failure before. Being treated like just another intern must have been humiliating for her. But instead of reflecting on the situation, she had chosen to shut herself away and avoid reality. That evening, Jake brought it up again. Miranda is still locked in her room at my parents' place, he said. Dad is asking if we can do something about it. I shook my head. What does he expect us to do? Jake sighed. He wants you to use your connections to get her a job at another foreign-affiliated company. He thinks if she has the right educational background, someone will take her in. I frowned. Miranda is fixated on working for a big company. But no matter where she applies, if she refuses to learn and cooperate with others, she will not last. Jake nodded, looking resigned. Yeah. No matter how much my dad wants to help her, in the end, it is up to Miranda. After her failed internship, Miranda officially stopped studying abroad and moved back into her parents' home. She became a complete recluse, never leaving her room or even speaking to her parents. My father-in-law called me again, asking for help. Could you find a job for Miranda? He asked. I hesitated. If she is willing to work for a smaller company, I might be able to find something, I said carefully. From behind the door of her room, Miranda's furious voice rang out. I will never let a high school graduate like you help me. I sighed. I had expected that reaction. There was no reasoning with her. From then on, I stopped trying to get involved. Even Jake no longer brought her up in conversation. When we visited his parents, we never even asked about her. Looking at Miranda now, I could not help but think what a waste it was. All those years of education, graduate school, study abroad, and yet she was now locked away, unwilling to face the world. When I found out I was pregnant, my in-laws shifted their attention from Miranda to my future child. I just hope our grandchild does not grow up to be like Miranda. My mother-in-law sighed. I silently agreed. Academic achievements meant nothing if they were not backed up by humility and hard work.